You may only get one chance at a first impression, but if that first impression consists of your protagonists falling through the scenery and half of your NPC's faces not loading in, don't be surprised if people don't stick around to get to know you a little better. But then, whatever happened to forgive and forget? We covered 10 games that botched the launch but stuck the landing later down the line in a previous video, but for better or worse, there are many more games that didn't but could have made the list. These are the games that took a good long look at themselves in the mirror and decided to do something about the mess they saw reflected back. While they might not be perfect, they are certainly worth another look, and they might just surprise you. To be clear, not every game on this list started out bad, but they did all get a negative response from players when they were first released. I'm the new and improved Peter from TripleJump, and here are 10 more games that deserve a second chance. Number 10. Dark Souls 2. It might be the black sheep of the Soulsborne franchise, but Dark Souls 2 is not without its charms. It's not without its rough edges and egregious difficulty spikes either, but for a community that's such a glutton for punishment, it's a shame so many fans won't give it a fighting chance. Maybe it isn't a carefully interconnected maze of cathedrals and catacombs like the original Dark Souls, but it was always intended to be its own thing. The game was incredibly ambitious, and while many of those ambitions fell flat, and its tendency to lean into the unfair with hidden traps and overly aggressive double boss encounters put many players off, many of these problems were fixed in the Scholar of the First Sin edition. Bundling in all 3 fantastic DLCs and reworking the story to give it a grander and more polished feel, Dark Souls 2 can now stand a little taller amongst its peers. The game's more unique design choices, from its less interconnected and more natural and varied world, to its power stances and its obsession with bosses, even eventually worked their way into a little game called Elden Ring. So if you've had your fill of the lands between, maybe book a holiday to Drangleic. I hear the locals are just as welcoming. Number 9. Street Fighter V. When buying a new game, players typically expect to be able to play everything it has to offer the moment they boot it up, and not have to pay through the nose for content and features previous titles included at no extra cost. Somehow, Capcom failed to get that memo though, as when Street Fighter V first launched, it was a disappointingly bare-bones experience riddled with microtransactions. As the first mainline Street Fighter game in 8 years, fans had high hopes for 5, hopes that were immediately dashed on launch day. The game debuted with the fewest modes and leanest selection of fighters to date, excluding fan favourites such as Guile and Akuma. The problem was, many of these missing fighters and modes were hiding on the disc, but were locked behind a paywall. And to make things even worse, server issues made it impossible to play against others online. Naturally, fans were furious, but Capcom listened. Agreeing that they, quote, didn't put out a complete product, the developers fixed the servers and released an updated and, more importantly, complete arcade edition of the game. Now, playing as it should have done at launch, Street Fighter V is easily one of the best fighting games out there. Thank goodness they didn't make the same mistake when it came to Street Fighter VI. Number 8. Mass Effect Andromeda. That ending notwithstanding, the original Mass Effect trilogy is a triumph of gameplay and storytelling. With the promise of a new adventure, aliens, romances, and a whole new galaxy to explore, Mass Effect Andromeda stirred fans into a frenzy of hype pre-launch. But when it finally arrived, it did so with less a bang and more a plop. The game was, without a doubt, a mess. Poor optimization and copious glitches left many early adopters clamoring for a refund as their character waddled or floated through levels and their companions contorted into pretzels. The launch was so disastrous that BioWare was forced to abandon its DLC plans to fix the game. Interesting writing aside, no, my face is tired. If you're happy to switch your brain off, the story is a fun spacefaring romp, and the characters, while not as memorable as Garrus or Tali, have their own charms. But it's the combat where the game truly shines. With faster and more fluid shooting and plenty of room for experimentation, the combat alone can keep players entertained for hours. While it still doesn't hold a candle to Shepard's fight to save the galaxy from the Reapers, Andromeda is definitely worth a play today, especially if you like aliens, and especially if you like aliens, if you catch my drift. Number 7. Halo: The Master Chief Collection. Remastering 4 of the best-loved games in the world should have been a surefire success. The fanbase is already there, after all. Yet, while the graphics and frame rate received favourable updates across the board, and the gameplay and controls were just as sharp and snappy as ever, there was one colossal problem with the Master Chief Collection. The multiplayer didn't work. Playing through shinier versions of the main campaigns was great and all, but multiplayer is Halo's bread and butter. It's the main reason people buy them in the first place, and was certainly the main reason fans picked up the Master Chief Collection. So for 343 Industries to drop the ball so hard, well, let's just say the fans weren't best pleased. Luckily, this story does have a happy ending. 343 worked overtime to fix the connectivity issues and allow fans to actually play the multiplayer as intended, but they didn't stop there. As an apology, they also added Halo Reach and Halo 3 ODST free of charge. As a result, the Master Chief Collection has gone from one of the most hated remasters of all time to one of the best of all time. Fans were so happy, in fact, that when the new and improved game came to Steam, they inundated 343's studio with pizza deliveries to say thanks. Ah, how lovely. Number 6. The Last of Us Part 2. While the original is often lauded as one of the greatest games of all time, The Last of Us Part 2 was met with a far more polarizing response. Though the game received near universal praise from critics, even garnering more than 320 Game of the Year awards, some fans responded with a little more trepidation. Now, if sales and general fan feedback are anything to go by, the majority were firmly on the side of the critics. We here at Team TripleJump were, as a general rule. However, a vocal minority were keen to make their opinions heard. Leaks prior to the launch of the game outraged certain fans by, spoiler alert, outing the fact that Joel brutally dies at the beginning, and the player must then play half of the game as his killer, Abby. While the story is very much its creator's vision and will not be to everyone's liking, it is a beautifully told and emotionally raw tale. The graphics, writing, and performances are all outstanding, but it's the combat that really elevates this game from its predecessor. Players must really think on their feet if they want to survive this apocalypse. It may be a desperately dark game, but it's the moments of light, levity, and hope that stick with players long after the credits roll. Number 5. Star Wars Battlefront 2, 2017. We've said it before and we'll say it again, microtransactions are the work of the devil. The launch of Star Wars Battlefront 2 was so catastrophic that it will go down as one of the worst in video game history. What was shaping up to be a promising follow-up to the well-received 2015 original, not original, that was 2004, quickly went down the drain when players got their hands on the beta. As fun as shooting Imperials and battle droids on Hoth and Naboo was, all multiplayer progression was tied to predatory loot boxes. It was so bad that it sparked a witch hunt in several countries, with many government bodies debating whether or not it constituted gambling. Thankfully, EA saw which way the wind was blowing, and after removing the progression-based loot box system and doling out several patches and updates to rebalance the game, Battlefront 2 has become the multiplayer shooter it was meant to be. They even threw in several free DLCs, which included maps and heroes from the likes of The Last Jedi and The Clone Wars, just to prove to fans how sorry they were. The loot boxes remained, but at least they only spit out cosmetics now. In the highly paraphrased words of Ben Kenobi, this is the Star Wars shooter you're looking for. Number 4. Assassin's Creed Unity. We've all seen the glitches, the falling through the scenery, the choppy frame rate, the faces that failed to load. Oh god, it still haunts my nightmares. Assassin's Creed Unity did not have the best of starts. But while it may have wheezed out of the gates half-finished, Ubisoft did not give up on it, and after a few months of tinkering, Unity was able to hold its head up high as perhaps the last true Assassin's Creed game. Lead character Arno was a likeable protagonist and deserves to be remembered alongside the series' greats, and while the story had its ups and downs, it was an enjoyable and entertaining adventure through history. The game also added some new complexity to Black Flag's combat with unique weapon types, and co-op made its first and only appearance, but the real charm of Unity was its setting. Mid-revolution Paris truly is a sight to behold, and especially now that the game doesn't crash as you explore it. The almost one-to-one replica of the city is wonderfully realised with graphics that still hold up to this day, and racing around using the game's updated parkour system lends a feeling like no other. Alas, poor sales led to Ubisoft taking the series in a different direction, and whilst the newer AC games are still great, we do miss how things used to be. Number 3. Days Gone. Zombie fatigue, no matter what some game developers want you to believe, is very much a thing. Sure, mowing down hordes of the undead has its charms, but unless a game takes it in a new direction, gamers will inevitably switch off, which was precisely the problem when it came to Days Gone. Days Gone was never a bad game by any means, but compared to hyper-polished, prestige-quality Sony first-party games like The Last of Us or God of War, the lackluster story and initially unlikable characters simply didn't stand a chance and failed to drum up the same attention. Why then is Days Gone on this list? Well, because of the hordes. While the zombies, or freakers as they prefer to be called in this game, are for the most part your standard common or garden variety, it's the fact that they roam the world in packs of 50 to 500 that makes them so much more interesting and dangerous. Once you deal with your first horde and watch them crawling over each other just to get to you, you will be hooked, and from there, it's easy for players to lose themselves in Days Gone's brutal wilderness. Besides, how many other games have you outrunning a pack of zombie wolves on a fully customizable motorcycle? Game of the Year material, right there. Number 2. Fallout 76. It's a very bold move to launch an open-world RPG without any NPCs. Bold, but stupid, as Bethesda quickly learned with their latest MMO, Fallout 76. The lack of NPCs was one thing, making the world feel boring and barren, but that wasn't even the worst of the game's problems. Bethesda are known for their bugs, so much so that it's become a bit of a meme, but believe me when I tell you that Fallout 76 took it to the next level. These ranged from the only mildly infuriating to actually somewhat amusing, such as missing textures and enemies T-posing through the air, to the game-breaking, such as corrupt saves and premium paid-for weapons vanishing into the ether. But as with the Elder Scrolls Online, Bethesda didn't just let the game die, they got to work. It took time, and it wasn't without even more pitfalls along the way, but today, 5 years after launch, Fallout 76 is almost unrecognisable. Numerous patches have quashed the worst of the bugs, not all of them though, it wouldn't be a Fallout game without them after all, and free updates and expansions have reintroduced NPCs and brought the game more in line with the previous entries in the franchise. So, if you're willing to walk down these country roads, you might just find some of the best quests the Fallout universe has to offer. Well, either that, or maybe a pack of feral ghouls. It's a roll of the dice, really. And number 1, Cyberpunk 2077. Few games have soared so high and crashed so spectacularly as Cyberpunk 2077. Promising unprecedented levels of choice and customization and gameplay like nothing else, hype for the game was through the roof. Then it came out, and, well, you know what happened. Night City was a blurry mess of missing textures and broken animations. Character models clipped through clothing, quests failed to trigger, the AI was incredibly dumb, and to top it all off, many promised features were missing. This wasn't so bad it was funny, this was just bad. But as with other studios on this list, CD Projekt Red didn't give up. Patch after patch did help, but it wasn't until they finally released the next-gen versions on console that fans really noticed a difference. Finally, the game was playable, and not only that, players could finally appreciate the twisting narratives, complex and well-realized characters, and truly impressive city CDPR had crafted. This still wasn't the game promised at launch, but it was far, far closer. With a new expansion and a complete revamp to the entire base game now available, there has never been a better time to journey into the heart of Night City. No, Cyberpunk 2077, you're breathtaking. You are now, anyway.